This Pisces partial lunar eclipse is the final Pisces eclipse that we will have for another 18 and a half to 19 years, and it is going to be testing our faith in the divine or any form of a higher benevolent power. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Hummingbird Arcana Podcast. I'm Jo Hummingbird. I am an astrologer, Usui Reiki Master, and a tarot and oracle specialist. I'm here to help awaken you to your cosmic divinity, and today I have an episode for you guys all about the upcoming Pisces full moon partial lunar eclipse that we have happening on Thursday, August 27th. And this one is a banger, to say the least. Not necessarily in a good way. This one, as we know, Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac, and this usually tends to deal with things that are beyond the ether. This is also rose-colored glasses and deception. There's a lot of themes that we have to unpack. There's quite a few aspects between planets and luminaries that we have going on, and we have some themes that are being brought up as always. So if you're interested in hearing all about this Pisces partial lunar eclipse, then keep on listening to this episode of Hummingbird Arcana. So like I mentioned in the beginning of this episode, this Pisces lunar eclipse will be happening at 11:19 p.m. or 23:19 if you are using military time. This happens in Central Standard Time Zone, so do your time zone conversions for where you live, and that is when it will be happening for you. But for where I'm at is in Central Time at 11:19 p.m., again on Thursday, August 27th, 2026, obviously. So with every full moon, we obviously know that this has the sun opposing the moon, and we have the sun at 4 degrees and 54 minutes of Virgo, with the moon opposite that at 4 degrees 54 minutes of Pisces. Now, this is the axis that we just moved out of with the node shift that we had happen about a month ago now, almost to the date, because this happened on July 26th, and this eclipse is happening August 27th, almost an exact month later. The nodes shifted from Pisces and Virgo, where they were for the last year and a half to 18 months, 19-ish months, give or take. That's why I say ish, because it is kind of a convoluted time when it comes to operating on Lunarian time. But that happened, that shift between Pisces and Virgo, where the nodes were for that year and a half to 19-20 months or so, into Aquarius and Leo. And that was a huge shift. We all felt that. I felt it. I was taking that day to really rest my body because that total solar eclipse energy was just wild. It was happening in the sign of Leo, where the nodes had shifted, and Leo is the ruler of the sun. For it to be a solar eclipse, it was just hypercharged. So I needed to rest for sure, and I'm pretty certain that many other people had to as well. It was quite intense. If you were paying attention on Threads, or if you happen to be on TikTok, I am not on TikTok at all, not anymore, but on Threads, we were lighting up the different, astrology communities and little like witch threads and everything. So there was a lot happening there. But I digress. The sun in Virgo, the moon in Pisces. This is happening on that axis of bridging the mundane with the magical and bridging ether with earthly realm. So this is the final eclipse within that axis to signify that indeed the nodes have shifted, and we will not have an eclipse on the Virgo-Pisces axis for, like I mentioned again in the beginning, for another 18 and a half to 19 years, because that is how long it takes for the nodal Lunarian cycle to move through signs and to return back to where it was. So in case you've noticed in your own natal chart, if you've ever gotten a reading or if you've had one with me and you've noticed a nodal return happening, that typically happens every 18 and a half to 19 years, where the nodes in your chart, or the nodes in the sky, in the transits, they will return to the place in your chart where they were when you were born. And so same concept, just, think of it as like a constantly living, breathing birth chart that exists in the cosmos all the time. So the sun in Virgo, this is obviously Virgo season. Happy Virgo season, everybody. I hope that you're doing okay. This is a time where we're all feeling sort of hyper productive and not necessarily having all the drive to do it because of other aspects we'll be getting into here in a moment. But with the moon in Pisces opposing this, this is literally lighting up with the two luminaries in astrology, the sun being the ego, the sense of self, the life force energy, the moon being emotions, the unconscious, the watery, sensitive, intuitive realms. This is lighting up the final time where this axis is going to be triggered of bridging the mundane with the magical. And particularly with the aspects that we have going on that I will get into here in a moment, it is quite challenging this time around. It's not, oh, Pisces, rose-colored glasses, everything's beautiful, all cosmic love and sunshine and rainbows. It's leaning more towards that Virgo energy, especially with this being Virgo season. And the last time we had an eclipse on this axis was the Virgo full blood moon lunar eclipse that we had back at the beginning of March. It was on March 3rd, and that was during Pisces season. So that was a little bit more etheric and watery. This one's a lot more earthy and grounded and a little bit denser. So let's go ahead and dive into the aspects that we have happening to this eclipse itself, to the sun and the moon. So the most notable that I want to take into account here first is the fact that Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, and where the sun is currently, it is conjunct the sun. It is right smack dab on top of the sun. We have Mercury at 5 degrees and 22 minutes of Virgo, and we have the sun at 4 degrees 54 minutes of Virgo. So there is less than 1 degree orb separation between the two. So this is a cazimi. This is when the sun and Mercury are in the same spot. This is quite a powerful, powerful thing to have happen during an eclipse, because we've seen cazimis happen. They happen not super, super often, but they do happen more frequently than not frequently. They're a little bit more common than, say, like watching a grand conjunction between multiple planets that happens in one singular sign, or even at the 29 degree / 0 degree of another sign. Like things like that are a little bit more rare and less common. But cazimis during an eclipse are not common whatsoever. So this is quite supercharged, especially with the sun, the life force energy lighting up Virgo during its season, with Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, in its position of both domicile and exaltation. Mercury is, like I just said, the ruler of Virgo, but it is not only in domicile in Virgo, it is also in its exaltation by dignity. So this is like Mercury on steroids. This is analysis paralysis central. This is, oh my God, my mind won't turn off and I can't really sleep. Even though that moon in Pisces wants to be super watery and in the ethers, and it wants to sleep and kind of feels groggy and a little bit lethargic, this mercurial hypercharged cazimi Virgo energy is like, nope, 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 we gotta go here, we gotta go here, we gotta check this off, I gotta take this, I gotta take out the trash, I gotta do the dishes, I gotta cook dinner, I gotta all over the place. So that's not necessarily fun, but it is important to note. And despite that not being super fun, it is going to sharpen our minds. It's going to make everything become a little bit more clear and concise, even though it is a lot more overwhelming and can be super overstimulating, because Mercury is the ruler of stimuli, and the nervous system's response to stimuli, the biochemical response that our nervous system has to it. So this could be a time where our bodies are super, super sensitive. Maybe your nervous system is just hyperactive. Maybe you're restless and can't sleep. Maybe your diet changes a little bit and you might need to shift around a couple of things that you're eating because you have a little bit more of a sensitivity to a certain food, or maybe you're drinking a lot more water, what have you. There's going to be some way that that manifests. And outside of that, routines are also going to be a little bit changed, I will say. This is leading into my next point here, because aside from Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, being conjunct the sun, i.e. also opposite the moon in Pisces, we will have a square going on between Uranus, the moon, as well as Mercury conjunct the sun, cazimi. So Uranus is over in Gemini at 5 degrees and 37 minutes. So this is creating an exact square to Mercury and a 1 degree orb separation square between the sun in Virgo and the moon in Pisces, because Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, and Sag are all the mutable signs. They are all square each other or opposite each other, i.e. Gemini, Sag opposition, Virgo, Pisces opposition. Now, Gemini is then square, thusly, to Pisces and Virgo both. With this being within 1 degree orb separation by square via Uranus to the moon, to the sun and Mercury cazimi, this is creating an unexpected shift in routines, period. Point blank. No ifs, ands, or buts. This can also manifest itself in ways of finding new innovations for our routines, but also adversely, because Uranus in Gemini is definitely the internet. Gemini, Mercury energy being communication, Uranus being in Gemini, also, doing the whole AI conversation. This could be that the internet is really hindering our mental health rather than helping it per se. And it's easily afflicted despite Mercury's exaltation in Virgo. And to continue on the note of just Uranus and Gemini, period, this is, especially with it squaring the moon in Pisces, this is AI infiltrating the religious psychosis and exacerbating it, i.e. all of those like horrible fucking AI ads that we see where men are treating women horribly, perpetuating patriarchal standards set in workplaces, let alone in culture, that have been set into place for thousands of years by Abrahamic religions and horrible bigoted men. With the moon being in Pisces, this is a lot of the times like the lack of boundaries as well. And especially with AI's sort of a trigger word here, it's a very R word, RAPEY word type energy and culture, because of the whole join AI or you'll be left behind by it, take it on, it's inevitable, just deal with it, just accept it. That is lack of consent, that is lack of autonomy, that is lack of sovereignty. And so, of course, with Pisces being the lack of boundaries, ruler of deception, rose-colored glasses, things that slip beyond the bounds of reality and into the ether, like devoid of all form, this is a time where Uranus and Gemini is really creating a challenge there where AI can really run rampant and make that worse, as if it already isn't already. This is quite exacerbated whenever we have, again, Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, in its both domicile and exaltation in Virgo being squared by Uranus and Gemini. It's really, really challenging to be able to find any sort of solace to that. So that is something that we need to be looking out for in case that does come up for anybody, or if it does affect you directly during this eclipse. Now, the next aspect I want to talk about is a little, I don't want to say less relevant, but it isn't as detrimental, but that doesn't mean it's not detrimental at all. So Mars is currently in Cancer, and that is the fall position, the fall sign for Mars. This is where Mars loses his ability to stand in the divine masculine frequency, it's where he feels like he fails. It's aside from being in Taurus or Libra, where it's in actual detriment. This is fall, where it's like the crumbling down, the breaking down of the masculine in the lunarian ruled sign, where emotions and sensitivity are required to exist. But it's also the space where the divine masculine falls away in order to learn from the wisdom of the feminine and the goddess herself. This is pretty much just the place where the divine masculine can kind of also feel helpless and useless and unproductive. And with Mars being the planet of conflict and war in the sign of Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, which governs our sleep, our dreams, things like that, we can also lose our quality of sleep, or we can even have extremely vivid or even violent dreams. I personally have had quite a few disturbing dreams leading up to this eclipse. I don't know if anybody else has. Probably my like spiritually sensitive or like really etheric being people out there have, but I've noticed that for myself. So don't freak out if you have some of those dreams leading up to this eclipse, or even during the eclipse, even day before, day of, day after type, because that is the eclipse bringing that up. It's not something psychologically wrong with you, I promise. And this whole Mars in Cancer position is going to be creating a sextile to the Sun, Mercury, cazimi, and Virgo. And what that is really doing is, again, it's affecting our routines, it's affecting our sleep rhythm, it's affecting our pattern. And you would think that sextile is a little more supportive. It can be for some people who may have a healthier relationship to Mars, Mercury, Lunarian type energy in their charts. But for those who don't have those placements prominent or in a healthy position in their chart, this will create more conflict than, something good. And the last of our planetary / heavenly body aspects that we have going on, Chiron, is technically not an asteroid, it's a dwarf planet, so that's why I say planetary, but it is commonly referred to in astrology as an asteroid. But we do have Chiron retrograde in Taurus, which is sextile the moon in Pisces. And this is creating the distortions between the material world, our access to resources, and our faith in the divine kind of challenging each other. Because with Chiron in particular, Chiron is retrograde in Taurus right now. And it has just recently moved into Taurus for the first time in however many years since Chiron moved into Aries. And when Chiron was in Aries, this was about conflict, aggression, shadow masculine wounding. And now that it's in Taurus, it's about shadow feminine wounding. So the not having enough, the not feeling satisfactory within your body, within your nervous system, not feeling comfortable to express to yourself, not feeling comfortable within the power of your voice or the power of your body's ability to respond to the natural world. And thusly, that is creating a challenge in our faith in the divine, a higher power, because Taurus is a Venusian ruled sign, which is the goddess. Pisces is all about the etheric energy, and the moon being another goddess energy. Chiron being about the wounding in ourselves that is both the key and the antidote to the wound itself, but it is also the wounding period. So it is this nuanced sort of infinity loop of kind of spiraling back and forth between reality and the ethers. It's really, really, as much as it is dense, it is also outside of you, but it's also in. It's so messy and weird. And as much as like the whole Chiron and Aries energy was messy and weird, that was messy and weird for different reasons. And Chiron and Taurus is very much tied to resources, the land, the earth, our ability to connect with nature and our natural rhythm within our bodies and without our bodies. So with that being said, here are the themes that we can kind of summate from all of these different aspects. So obviously we have the whole harsh reality is testing our faith in a higher power / divine benevolent order. We also have that hope feels like it is dwindling, yet there is still a collective shift happening with that whole having moved away from the Pisces Virgo nodal axis and into the Leo and Aquarius axis. This is moving again away from earth and ether and into audacity and authenticity. So this is about these final themes from the whole Pisces Virgo axis also being challenged. And the fact that that whole trope of, oh my God, if there's a benevolent frequency or force or consciousness that exists and permeates all the universe, then why the fuck is it letting all these horrible things happen? And honoring that feeling because it is so immensely present with this eclipse in particular. And particularly with lunar eclipses as opposed to solar eclipses, the moon is the ruler of emotions and intuition and the things that happen on the inner world versus the sun is what shines outward. It's the life force energy, it's the ego, it's the sense of self. So the sense of self really is challenged more so during the solar eclipses, i.e. the Leo eclipse and the Aquarius eclipse that we had earlier this year. But with the Virgo one that we had earlier this year, as well as and in tandem with this Pisces eclipse that we have with the moon, this is really about the inner world being challenged and it feeling more personal rather than external. So then it's also super easy to feel behind and inadequate or depleted of life force energy. So do what you need to do for yourself in order to restore it to the best of your ability without judging yourself too terribly much or as harshly as the whole zeitgeist of the bigoted, capitalistic, late stage type bullshit wants you to be. And after all, the whole like bigoted Epstein class level greed that is ruining our world and subsequently our lives is not our individual faults for those of us who are adversely affected by it, because we are not the ones contributing to that. They are. And it is also stunting our ability to have faith in each other, especially with the nodes having shifted into Aquarius and Leo, Leo being the south node right now and Aquarius being the north node. This is, again, also humanitarianism being challenged by nobility and pride. Some people want to be in the enlightened frequency of Leo, where they're doing the right thing by themselves and others. And then some other people want to be in the shadow frequency of Leo, where it's pride and ego, which Leo is the ruler of the sun is the ego. So it makes sense here, and it's really challenging to work with, but it is also bringing about the necessary change, bringing about the awareness to these kinds of things in order for people to be bothered enough to actually do something. So how do we actually work with this eclipse? Well, rest in all forms that you possibly can without judging yourself for having to do so, because that's exactly what late-stage capitalism and corruption and greed and bigotry wants you to feel. And then try to find a balance between your activism and education with regulation and regrouping. You can be an activist and you can educate yourself and you can spread awareness about things, but you can also take time to regulate and regroup so that way you can do that from a better place rather than it just being sharing whatever the fuck shows up because you don't have the capacity to learn about it or do the deeper work or do the learning or expanding of your awareness because you're, again, depleted. So do what you can to rest yourself to a reasonable amount or a healthy amount so that way you can actually show up better for the world around you. And then, that kind of also ties into the whole like airplane oxygen mask thing. As selfish as it sounds, it's like you literally cannot help people in a crisis situation if you don't help yourself first. So if you can't survive, then you can't help somebody else survive. So do what you can in your little version of survival mode or your big version of survival mode, whatever that looks like for you, and utilize what privilege or access to resource or platform or anything that you have to be able to make a difference, because any difference is better than none. And if you're sitting on your ass doing absolutely nothing at all, even after resting, even after regrouping, and you're still doing nothing, that's more of a problem than any form of action that you can possibly take in the right direction. So with that being said, that is all that I have for you about this Pisces lunar eclipse. I hope that you enjoyed hearing about all this, despite the fact that it was kind of dense and not super fun what we're talking about. But if it resonates with you, or if you found the information useful and you're watching on YouTube, then let me know by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on that post notification bell so you're notified every time a new episode comes to your feed. And if you are streaming instead of watching, hello, I'd implore you to leave a rating or a review for the podcast and let me know in the comment section of the review as well on YouTube if you're still watching. Let me know in the comments, what are you going to be doing to rest and regroup, and what are you doing to provide any sort of form of activism in the world? What are you doing for yourself? What are you looking forward to do? What do you intend to do? What is it that you're trying to do? And what ways are you responding to the world around you? Are you overstimulated? Are you burnt out? Are you feeling super hopeful and optimistic? Let me know. I'm curious and I want to hear from you, because the further we separate ourselves from each other, the worse off we are. So again, I'll leave it here. Thank you again for tuning into this episode of Hummingbird Arcana. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do so. I'm Jo Hummingbird. It's always my greatest privilege, pleasure, and honor to assist you in awakening you to your cosmic divinity. Many blessings and take care, my beautiful friends. I'll see you next time.